Hi, this is Alex from phpacademy.org with a video tutorial for the new Boston. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the height and width properties in jQuery and how we can retrieve the height and the width of any particular element. Obviously we can also then apply this to the document window or the document itself, or the browser window and the document itself. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is create a div on the page, and we'll just put some content in here. It doesn't really matter what we do. With regards to the ID, let's go ahead and give it a name of something just like div, something generic. I'm then going to go ahead and style this so we can actually set some properties to it ourselves. So the first thing I'm just going to do is give it a background color, just so we can see the sort of physical height and width of it, and then I'm going to go ahead and actually set a height and width to it. So I'm going to give it 100 pixel and the width I'm going to give it 250 pixels. So on our page now we can see that we've got a div here with some content, and it's 250 width and 100 height. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and in actual fact probably better to get rid of this content, and I'm going to replace the content inside of the div with the height and the width of the div. So we come over to ext.js, which I have included on my page, as well as jQuery, and we can start to write our code out in here. So I'm first of all going to say document.ready just when the DOM's loaded and we are ready to start start outputting. We just do this usually in jQuery. And I'm going to go ahead and set two variables. The first is div height, and this is going to be equal to, and we're going to reference, or we're going to select this div, and that's just called div. So we can go ahead and say hash div, and all we need to do is go ahead and apply the height property. So yeah, I knew I'd spell that wrong. So yeah, okay, now we're going to go ahead and get the width. So we do exactly the same thing, but this time obviously it's quite easy to guess. We would just apply .width to the end. So now I'm going to go ahead and output this to the div itself, so div.text, and in here I can go ahead and write something like width yeah, that's right, width x or width x, height x. So x I'm just going to go ahead and replace with by appending this on, and I'm going to replace the div width, and I'm going to do the same with x, so I can just append this on to the end of this string, and that is div height. So this is obviously in pixels. When we refresh, you can see that we get a representation of the div width and the div height. There are other ways to do this. For example, we could go ahead and use the CSS property. So we could go ahead and use CSS here, and then supply or ask for the height, and we could go ahead and then say CSS and then supply width in there. And what this will do is it will return more or less the same thing, but you'll see that we'll get the px on the end of it. And there's two ways that why this is unreliable and may require more processing power. The reason being is that, for example, if we were to use this and we wanted to use it as an integer, this doesn't return it as an integer, it only returns with the absolute value in the style.css file, or the CSS that's applied to it. So what we would need to do is go ahead and use parseInt. Now obviously the first downfall of this, or the downside to this, is that we're unnecessarily processing this and passing it as an integer, and parseInt's just going to obviously pass the value as an integer and just go ahead and remove px. So we can do it that way, but you know, why write all this out when it's completely unnecessary, and you could go ahead and use the width and height options like this and like this. So the other reason that we would go ahead and do it like this is because we might not have predefined a height and a width to this div. For example, the content might have filled up the div to the point where it's at a size that we haven't defined. You know, the content might not overlap but push the div and create more width or more height to it. So using height and width will always return an integer, which is one benefit, less processing power and not having to use parse in. And the other benefit is that it will get the height and the width reliably, regardless of the content that we add. So for example, at the moment you can see it's width 250 and height 100. If I was to go ahead and inside of the div write, let's just say text and then break, and let's just copy and paste this a few times, and then in ext change this to append, because we obviously don't want to rewrite over our content. You can now see that, oh okay, yeah, so right, let's just go ahead and get rid of style in here. So we have a div now that will just sort of like overflow the content. You can now see that the properties have changed for this. We've got different width. I'm not sure what, oh, that's just because it automatically went to the edge of the document.